We look forward to the time when there is no more night, when your people can come out of hiding, when your people can't stop all the fighting, when peace is established across the nation, and we bow before you in adoration at the New Jerusalem, when the war is done, when the world is new, the tribes are one, the New Jerusalem, that's where we'll be, just worshiping the King of Kings, the God of all.
Shabbat Shalom to all of you again. Thank you for joining us on this third part of this week's Parasha, the Parasha of Mishpatim, which means laws. So, this third part, I'm calling it, Does Our History Become Torah Law? And the surprising source of the Torah laws of murder. The last time we talked about the laws of what would happen if we struck our mother or father, kidnapped somebody, or if we cursed our mother and father. And where do these things come from? And the first one was about the slave laws for women. So this part is about the laws of murder. So, like I said, where do our laws in the Torah really come from? So when God says something like, don't do this, but do this, what is the basis for this? Is it random? Is it arbitrary? Is it an invention of God's mind that we're not meant to understand? Or might Jewish laws have some other rational basis? I have kind of an interesting idea that many of the Torah's laws given to the Jewish nation were actually based off of the stories, like I said before, of our forefathers and the foremothers. So, in this section, in this video, I will explore this through the laws of murder given in this week's Torah portion. Now, Parasha Mishpatim contains a lot of laws, as I said. The laws just kind of seem to come out of nowhere. Laws about murder, laws about torts, all sorts of laws. So I would like to suggest to you that at least in some cases, these laws do not come from nowhere. Okay, they actually come from our very own history. As if God kind of goes back to what we've done when we were not yet a nation, when we were a family, and he uses this as a kind of a basic raw material from which to shape these laws. God is talking about us as Jews about our own history. So what is the history behind the Torah law? I would like to just take a moment to demonstrate a little bit of this to you and some of the surprising conclusions that can come from it in the laws of murder, which the Mishpatim delineates. Okay, so here are the verses. When we read them, I would like you to keep two things in mind. First, what are the problems here? And second, does any of these remind you of anything that we have encountered before? So as we go through these, let's think about this. So, here we go. Ish vamet mot yumat. If a person kills another person, they shall die. Now the Torah immediately qualifies this, and it depends whether the perpetrator dies. What does it depend upon? One thing, obviously, it has to do he has to do the act. He has to kill the person, okay? But the other is that he has to have the right intent. Very interesting point. So the Torah says, tzada. If he doesn't have the right intent, if he wasn't planning on killing him from before. It just happened. Oh, I killed the guy. I didn't mean to. Elohim ina leyado. And God just kind of brought it about. It just happened by accident. V'samti lecha bakom asher yanus shama. Then God says, I'm going to give him a place to run away from. I am going to make sure that he has refuge from any relatives who might want to take revenge for the murder and kill him. It was an accident. It wasn't really his fault. So God understands that these things can happen. All right? God just sort of made it happen. That's one kind of murder. Okay? Murder that's not culpable because the intent wasn't culpable. He wasn't out to murder the person. All right? Now, the Torah also says, what if the intent was culpable? What if it was premeditated, as we would say today? What example is that? Well, it says, Dehi yatzid ish al reu nehorgo beorma. If a person plots in advance to kill him secretly, he's plotting to kill, premeditated. So, me'im nitzbehi tikachenu lamut. You can take such a person away from my very altar to die. So say that person who did premeditate, he ran to one of those cities, what they were called safe zones for people who had these problems. There were certain cities you could go to, and you could grab onto the altar at the temple maybe, and plead to God to save you. However, he's saying in this case, if it was premeditated, you drag him away from that altar. So, me'im mitzbehi tikachenu lamut. That's what he says. You can take him from my altar to die. I'm not going to give him any place to run away from. It's not just. It can be somebody who's trying to get revenge against him. The state itself is going to do away with him. Capital punishment. For those of you who are against capital punishment, well, there's the statement for it. However, granted, many people die who are innocent, who are not guilty of murder, and that is an issue, and that is unfortunate. But for those who are guilty, I would have to say the capital punishment was how things were dealt with at that time, and God himself said so. So these are the two verses. Now the problem we can have with these verses, one problem that one might have, they are out of order. I would think what would have been much more logical if you said, look, if a person kills somebody, then they're going to die. Under what circumstances is that true? If a person plots in advance to kill his friend or anybody, that's when you do away with him. But if he didn't have a culpable intent, if he wasn't trying to kill him, God just made it happen. It was an accident. Then the person will have refuge. The state itself will provide the refuge for a person like this. That would have been the logical way, but we reverse it. We talk about the exception before the rule. So why do you think it does it this way? I think maybe the answer to that is that the Torah is actually following its kind of own chronology, because the events that it is patterning these laws after actually happened in the order in which the Torah tells us they happen. Okay. So in other words, ashed lo tzada, the thing that happens without intent, happens before the thing that happens with intent. And what things are we talking about? So what is the Jewish law based on? Well, for that, we just need to look at the operative verbs in each verse. So in Hebrew, let's start with Hi yatzid ish al re'eu. So that word for killing is an unusual word. Zud zayin dalet. Okay, the Yud zayin dalet are the three letters that actually appear only one other time in the Torah, and it is kind of when Jacob and Esau, or Yaakov and Esau word. Okay, remember when he made the lentil stew, and his brother came home from the fields. He was tired, and he said, "Give me some of the lentil stew." So Jacob says, "I will be happy to give it to you, but show me your birthright." Well, the lentil stew was called nadzid, and the verb for making that lentil stew was called yadzid. So in that case, Bayazed, Jacob, Yaakov, Nadzid, Zud, Zayin, Dalet. Okay, the three letters. Jacob was preparing the lentil stew. Now, this is strange that word, the only other time Yud, Zayin, Dalet appears is right over here, but we're talking about murder and killing. But we could just be getting ahead of ourselves. It could be coincidence, but it doesn't really seem like coincidence because actually, if we look at the verb in the other verse we talked about, it is also a Jacob and Esau word. And it's very strange. Ba'asher lo zada. Hunt. Hunt. It means that Esau, that's Esau. Where if Jacob is the guy who made lentil stew, Esau was the hunter. He was going on the fields all day that day to hunt, and he is known as the one who is Yodeh Zadai, the one who knows how to hunt. His father comes and tells him, go hunt for me for venison. Okay, so it is almost like we have Jacob and Esau popping up here in these verbs. And it's not just in the actual words, people. It's in the larger ideas of what the verse talks about. So let's go back to that verse that had to do about somebody killing with intent and with malice. So first of all, you can ask yourselves, did that ever happen in our story? Do we ever have an example of somebody lying in wait to kill someone else? The answer is yes. Of course, we know that. So let's dig into a little bit of historical sources of Jewish law. There was actually somebody who lied in wait secretly to kill someone else, and it was Esau. Esau, after Jacob or Yaakov deceives him with the blessings, what does the text tell us? Yikrevu yemei eval avi. Soon my father will die, Esau says to himself. Yaharga et Yaakov aki, and I will kill my brother Jacob for what happened. He's premeditating murder. Yeah. So just stop and ask yourself this. Why does Esau want to kill Yaakov? You might say, well, he stole the blessing. He stole my birthright. He stole two things. Obviously, he's very upset, but it wasn't just this local event, which happened right now, that Esau is mad about. So if you back up a few verses, Esau says, Achi kara shmo Yaakov. This is why they call him Yaakov. Okay? Yakveni ze famain. He has tricked me twice. Okay? All right, so, and then he says, Et bechorati lakach. Way back when we were kids, he took my birthright. Vahata lakach birchati. Now, years later, he's taking my bracha. Okay? He's taking the blessing. So first he took his birthright. Now he's taking my blessing. He's taking two things from me. That's why he hates them. All right? So it's kind of like the Torah is telling us, what we mean when we say malice before thought, premeditated malice. You know what we are talking about when we're talking about Esau who lies in wait? We are talking about somebody who hates somebody. Obviously, if you hate somebody, he might want to make you murder them. So, going back decades, he's been waiting and waiting for the time that he can get him. Slowly, his hatred builds and builds. There's one slight, and then there's another slight. He plots and he waits for the time when he can kill. Obviously, when his father dies. And in Esau's case, obviously, it never happened. Esau never actually went through with the action, obviously, because Jacob ran and left. But this is a kind of malice that we are talking about. So if we put the verses together, Chayadzid ish aleheu lehorgo beorma. Okay, this man who is the perpetrator who wants to kill his friend secretly, okay, in a way that others wouldn't know. What is it that got him so angry? Is that Chayadzid, all the way back to the lentil stew, when I was angry at him? I have been lying in wait for decades until the moment when I can get him. The Torah is taking that idea and shaping it and playing kind of a what if. Okay, what if he would have gone through with it? he would be liable for capital crime. And I'm sure if he had done it, God would have taken care of him. Then the Torah says, let's take the other side of things. In Esau's case, he had this sort of culpable intent. He was thinking about killing, but he never actually went through with it. But what if we had the reverse? What if we have somebody who went through it, but didn't but didn't have the intent? Wow. That's the other verse. Asher lo zada beha Elohim ina leyado. It was the accident. God just made it happen. Okay. V'samti lecha makom asher yanus shama. I will give him a place to run away to. Yeah, he is guilty of killing. Okay, I think nowadays we would call it manslaughter. Okay, in America, but there was no intent. Fascinatingly, if you look carefully to this verse, what does this remind us of in the Jacob and Esau story? Who got a place to run away from in order to escape the vengeance of someone who might come after him? Jacob himself, like I said. Rebecca says, go, run away to my brother's house. Esau is going to kill you. And now, here's the surprising thing. It emerges that in the story that the Torah is telling us, the story on one hand is the story of Esau, the other person who wants to kill with malice, premeditatively, but it's also a story about Jacob. Jacob did something all right. He did steal the blessing of Esau, and that's not right to steal, right? We know that. But it was Asher lo tzada. He wasn't doing it out of malice. All right? He wasn't trying to get the hunter, his brother Esau. Elokim ina leyado. It was God who just made it happen. Circumstances conspired. His mother comes in and says, I heard your father saying this. Go quickly, get the blessing before he knows it. His mother puts him on clothes. And before you know it, he's saying, I am Esau. The words just come out of his mouth almost as if God had planned out. And in one way or another, God is going to see to it that Jacob gets blessing. Okay. Because if you read later on, the house of Jacob is blessed. It could have, and it should have, and it would have been so much better if it happened in a clean way. How much strife between brothers would have been avoided if Jacob had just come to his father and said, please bless me. I can give you meat? In the end, he didn't. He did act an act that caused pain. This deception, but without malice, premeditatedly, without planning. Okay, it is almost like it happened by accident. I will give you a place to run away from, is what God is saying. Okay, so here we are. We read it in the Jacob and Esau story in Genesis, and the story just ends, and you don't really understand how to interpret it. What do we make of what Jacob did? Was it this terrible thing? The Torah seems to be coming out and saying, well, there may have been terrible consequences. And in terms of the pain that Esau felt, it's almost like the Torah is playing a defense attorney for Jacob here. And the larger picture is that he just really didn't plan to do this. All right? It just sort of happened. So, for those of you who are interested in a more detailed explanation of ideas, I would refer you to a book called Yaakov, Man of Truth. Okay? So, in the meantime, let me leave you with the following thought. There's a new way we can define the Torah laws. What I have shown you here, I think, is the beginning of a much larger pattern that animates many of the laws in the Torah. These laws don't come out of nowhere. There's a reason for them. Often they come out of, like I said, the history, the past of the Israelites. Before they became Israelites, the past of the family of Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, so on and so forth. So, they're a divine response to our history. What did we go through? Our family history in Genesis ends up becoming a template for laws that as a nation, we must abide to. Unfortunately, it's not happening right now. Someday it will again, so that we can live out a perfected vision of that history. All right, so there might have been mistakes that we made that need to be corrected, So laws correct those in the future. Maybe there were times that others took advantage of us. Say, see, never allow yourself to get taken advantage of by them. Sometimes we were the victim of somebody else who was terribly evil, as we know, and they become a paradigm of evil that we must never allow ourselves to copy, to emulate. All sorts of possibilities as you travel through the whole mixture of all these laws. So you see a good example of this. By the way, if you go into another course that we will be doing on the Haggadah, the whole intricate laws of the Korban Pesach, okay, the Passover killing, okay, for the Passover lamb. So, if of the sacrificial Paschal lamb, the most detailed laws of any sacrificial offering. There are more details on that offering than any other. So they all play part of our history. They're the goats and the coat stories, different stories all put together and of different other times, and they are made perfect. Okay, so join us in part 4 as we continue with the Parasha Mishpatim. Thank you for joining us today, and may you be blessed. Shabbat Shalom again, and welcome to this week's Torah portion, the Parasha Mishpatim, part 4. All right, this is the last part of this Parasha for this week, and the reason we're doing this in 4 parts is just to make it a little easier. Give yourself a little break between videos, okay? So it's not so long. Obviously, you can stop the video anytime, but we wanted to do this kind of in a fun way to make it a little easier to digest also. So the 4th part is called, Can Laws Be Meaningful? Seeing laws as moral principles of Jewish life. And I might want to say it might not be a bad thing to apply them to our daily lives as well, if we could. So again, welcome to the Parasha Mishpatim, the 4th part. And if you don't remember, I will catch you up. We're right in the middle of the one very exciting story in the Torah. Last week in the Parasha Yitro, Jethro, we experienced national divine revelation for the first time when we received the 10 Commandments. But before we get to our next big story, the sin of the golden calf, the text takes a major digression, and there are chapters and chapters of just laws. Okay, so how do we understand Jewish laws in the Bible? What is going on here? Our stories, our narrative gets interrupted. We've had laws before, but never this many, and never in one big lump sum, right? And there's almost an entire parasha of laws. You want to get through it, you're reading it, and you're thinking, wow, when is this thing going to get over? Oh, but they're important. And the laws themselves aren't that exciting, granted. They are intricate laws about damages, judicial systems, etc., etc. Couldn't God have first finished the story that was going on at Mount Sinai and all the other things and put the laws maybe at the end? Why do we get all these laws, and why here in the middle of a story? So let's explore together, and we'll do what we call the Parasha experiment. We get 3 chapters of laws: criminal law, damages, torts, laws about sexual ethics, social justice, setting up a judicial system, and a few about serving God. Wow, it's pretty heavy. God talks about the benefits of keeping these laws. Okay, now, for those of you who might be listening and say, well, we're in the New Testament times, Jesus came and died for our sins and was raised, and we're under the law of grace and this and that. Well, where that might be true, okay, God wants us to keep the 10 Commandments. But one thing he has revealed to many people and to me is that there are blessings. There are benefits to keeping the laws that he has written. Granted, we can't keep all of them. Okay, maybe we might not find somebody's cow wandering in the field where it says what to do in that case. Maybe we'll find somebody's car out somewhere that's been abandoned or stolen or I don't know, misplaced. What do we do in that case? All right. What about the laws of eating? There are so many things out there that, yeah, we can eat them, but are they good for us? Okay? There are many things that aren't so great to do. Cooking your meat all the way through, or at least to the point where it's cooked and there's no more blood in it. That's healthy, people. Okay, so all these things, just as a side note, there are blessings to doing what the Bible says. Planting in a certain way, 6 years planting, 7 years, the seventh year rest, not crop alternating the crop fields, which is completely useless. All right, doing it God's way does yield blessings in our lives. Okay, so God talks about the benefits of keeping these laws. Moses tells the laws to the people who commit to them by famously saying, "We will listen and do." Well, we know where that went. Moses, Aaron, and the elders ascend Sinai and see a vision of God. Finally, Moses goes up to the mountain to get the tablets. So what are all these laws doing here, interrupting our story? We may find the answer by looking at a few of the laws themselves. As we do, you can ask yourself, what do the laws remind me of? Is there any meaning behind biblical law? We have laws about one who hits someone and ends up killing him. Okay, makeh ish vamet, as we talked about before. There are laws about kidnapping, begonev ish umecharo. If one steals a person and sells them, that's what it is, kidnapping. All right, we learn about umekalel aviv ve'imo, one who curses his parents. All right, and trust me, God still sees these things today, and he does deal with people. He might not have them die, but he might. Or he might help them to learn some way or another what they're doing is wrong. All right, so let's stop here. Do these three categories of laws together remind us of anything? Laws about killing, stealing, disrespecting one's parents? It kind of reminds us of the 10 Commandments. Okay. Lo tirtzach, do not kill. Lo tignov, do not steal. Okay. Abed et avicha vet imecha, respect your parents. Now, you might be thinking, yes, but those are just 3 laws that happen to also be in the 10 Commandments. So what about it? It doesn't mean that there's any real connection, right? But we want to suggest that there is. That the 10 Commandments are actually principles, and the laws of the Mishpatim are the mini application of those larger principles. Okay, an application of those simple 10 Commandments, split up in different ways. So, there is one man named Ramban Nachmanides who actually suggested that these laws are related to the 10 Commandments. He doesn't really show us how. Okay, so we're going to try to uncover some of those connections together. Now, as we saw, some of these laws, like killing, stealing, honoring one's parents, fit really obviously into some of the 10 Commandments. Those are the easy ones. Okay, other laws, those seem to have nothing to do with any of them. All right, I had to beg to differ. The part about finding somebody's cow in the field if he's wandering or whatever, doesn't that kind of have to do with treating others the way you want to be treated, right? Or not coveting another person's belongings? Just saying. But when we look at the language of those laws, we may start to notice remarkable and interesting connections. So let's talk about biblical connections to Jewish laws. Take a look. The very first laws in this parasha have to do with servitude. All right? On the surface, there's nothing in the 10 Commandments that has anything to do with slavery. But we can take a look at the language. Ki tikne eved ivri. When you acquire a Hebrew slave, shish shanim yavod. He'll work for you for 6 years. Now, uvashavi it yetze achafashi hinam. And in the 7th year, he will go free. Okay. What does that remind of us in the 10 Commandments? Sheshet yamim tabod. For 6 days you shall work. For 6 years he shall be your slave. Very interesting, right? So, Biyom Hashvi Shabbat, Lashem Elohecha, Lata'aseh Chol Melacha. And the seventh day shall be a Sabbath to God. You shall not do any work. Seventh year, slave will be set free. He's no longer working for you. So, by recalling some of the same language, the Torah seems to be telling us that these laws of servitude are somehow connected to the Sabbath. All right? So, how could that be? Of course, servitude has nothing to do with actually keeping the Sabbath, unless there's more to Sabbath than we actually think. So, what are laws as moral principles of Jewish life? Laws usually require certain actions, right? Pay your taxes, stop at a red light. Many of the Torah's laws are about the same way. Okay, the laws aren't just about the actions themselves, they're expressions of higher principles. Here's just one example. Paying taxes is an expression of commitment to the larger system we choose to be part of. If you don't like it, go move somewhere else, right? It pays for roads, protection, natural parks, infrastructure that society as a whole enjoys and benefits from, even if we don't partake in every aspect of it, okay? In our parasha, by connecting certain laws in the Mishpatim to the Ten Commandments, perhaps the Torah is teaching exactly this perspective about the purpose of laws. While two laws might not look the same in action, they may be two different expressions of one similar principle. So why would there be any time limit to how long you can have a servant? Well, when you, the master, are forced to free a servant, it's a reminder that you're really not the master. You don't own the servant. You don't own anything. Like it says before, even the land, you don't own it. God is the only master. If that's what the laws of servitude are about, and the laws are connected to the Sabbath, what does that tell us about the underlying values of the Sabbath? When we keep the Sabbath, we testify to the creation of the world. God created the world in 6 days and rested on the seventh. But the laws of servitude show us that this principle goes even deeper. Sabbath is also a reminder that we're not the creators, okay? Throughout the week, we work and we create, and it feels like we're in control. One day a week, we disconnect and reflect on God's creation, on Himself. We remind ourselves we're not the masters. The world does not work according to our rules. So, how do we apply Jewish laws and the rules to our own lives? So, we can look at what's happening here. It's not only that the laws in the Mishpatim are applications of the Ten Commandments, they're actually kind of a commentary about them. Okay, the laws add a new level of depth and teach something fundamental about the value that each of the Ten Commandments is promoting. Let's take another look at another law in our Parasha. Lo tisa shema shav. Do not give a false report about someone in court. Okay. Now, if we only looked at the concept here, we might say, well, that fits into the 9th of the 10th commandments, where it says, Lo tirtzak, lo yinav, lo tignov, lo ta'aneh vereacha et shacher. Do not give false testimony. Wow, that's pretty long for saying that. However, look again at the language. It's almost exactly the same language used in the 3rd of the 10 commandments. Lo tisa et shem Hashem Elohecha lashav. Do not take God's name in vain. Well, what happens when we're in court? Who, at least at one time, I don't know if they do it anymore, but who do most courts swear upon? Maybe not God's name Himself, but the Bible. And who wrote the Bible? You know it. So, if you're falsely bringing false report, false things in court against someone, and you've placed your hand on that word, or back in the day, they used to say, so help me God, okay, you just took His name in vain. Very serious. So, it feels like these two laws are extremely related. But how? What does not spread a false report have to do with using God's name in vain? Well, I just said it. You're in court. You just swore on his name or on the Bible, which he wrote. So there you go. When we spread a false report about someone, we're not just giving people false information. We're taking something crucial to one's identity and abusing it also. Perhaps that's what's happening in the third commandment too. Okay, it's not just about using God's name out of context. Throughout the Torah, God's name is the way in which God relates to us and how we relate to him. Not taking God's name in vain is about not belittling or devaluing who God is. So this also leads us to the life principles hidden in the Jewish laws. Again, the expansion of the laws in our parasha teaches something fundamental about the principles that underlie the laws. Let's look at one more example. In the Mishpatim it says, Kol almana v'yatom lo te'anun. You shall not oppress any widow or orphan. Again, an oppression of widows or orphans doesn't seem to be in the Ten Commandments. But what does this language remind us of? We just saw it in the 9th of the 10th commandment, 10 Commandments. Lo ta'aneh bereacha et shaker, which is generally translated as do not bear false testimony against your friend. That's that same phrase used in our parasha, Kol almana v'yatom lo te'anun. What in the world does not mistreat a widow or orphan have to do with not bearing a false witness? So in the Mishpatim, the phrase let the nevin means do not mistreat. If you apply that same definition to the Ten Commandments, okay, that doesn't mean just don't bear false testimony against a friend. It means don't mistreat your friend by bearing false witness or testimony. All right, and that forces us to transform our understanding of this law. Personally, I've always wondered why bearing false witness would make the 10 Commandments. Okay, it's important, but it doesn't feel like a top 10 worthy thing to maybe some people. But this may be the answer. It's more fundamental than not testifying falsely. Ta'aneh seems to be a word that describes oppression of those with power against the less powerful. Widows and orphans are examples of people that are so often left powerless and alone. The law is about not using your power to exploit those less fortunate. And maybe that's what the Torah is teaching when it says don't bear false witness. So when you testify in the court, you're in a tremendous position of extreme power. You have the difference between a guilty and a not guilty, okay, for somebody who might not be guilty. All right, or to bring about a non-guilty for somebody who is. So, in a very real way, you can control the fate of the ones about whom you are testifying, while they themselves can usually do nothing. They are helpless, at least in the case of those who are not guilty. So, again, not only do the laws and Mishpatim recall the 10 Commandments, they also transform the way we can understand their underlying principles. Now, there are so many laws in this parasha, and we cannot explore all of them or show how they all fit into one of the 10 categories. That would take forever. So I suggest you go and read them and say, okay, how does this fit into the 10 Commandments? You might find that I think you're going to find all of them, some way or another, fit into one of the categories. All right. Hopefully, these few examples will give you a taste of what's going on and provide a lens that you can use to explore, like I said, the other laws on your own. Let's return to our earlier question. Why are these laws here in between the epic stories of the revelation of the Mount Sinai and the golden calf? So how do the laws guide the principles of Jewish life and life in general? Last week in the Parasha Yitro, we discussed one aspect of Israel's experience at Sinai, the revelation, direct interaction with God. Erased all doubts about whether God was really with Israel, really cared about them, but there's one more important thing that happened at Sinai too. As the people stood at Mount Sinai, God said, Ve'atem tiyu li mamlechet kohanim begoyei kadosh. You, Israel, will be to me a kingdom of priests and a holy nation. They were given an actual mission, kind of like the believers in Yeshua nowadays. What mission are we given? To be priests and a holy nation or holy people. All right? That is our mission now. Become people who spread God's word, values to the rest of the world, to spread the message of salvation in Yeshua HaMashiach, Jesus Christ, which is precisely the mission that Abraham was given back in his day. Oh, yes. So this is how blessing would come to the rest of the world. But how is Israel supposed to spread God's values? Well, Parasha Mishpatim could be one of the answers. All right, as we see, the world is becoming more and more lawless every day. All right, so if these laws were actually put into practice, like I said, I think it would eliminate or at least decrease drastically many problems out there today. Okay, people just get a slap in the hand nowadays for anything. I murdered somebody, oh, you get 5 to 10 years. Some cases, right? So if people just got the 10 Commandments and you know why these laws are such a big deal now. They aren't just laws, they're moral principles. And the laws in the Mishpatim right after the 10 Commandments, while the people are still at Sinai, are the ways in which we live those larger values in our everyday lives. That's what all the laws are really about. They're not, like I said, oppressive restrictions or annoying rules. God knows what he's doing. Okay, they're manifestations of our values. God doesn't want us to just keep the law and the 10 Commandments here and the law and the Mishpatim there. It's about recognizing the bridge that ties them together, people. The principle itself. The laws are God's beautiful way of teaching us how to bring those moral values within ourselves in our day-to-day lives, how to put them into action. So Jewish rules and laws that we can live by. Okay, that is how Israel is meant to accomplish its mission. All right, God doesn't appear at Sinai and just explicitly tell Israel all of his fantastic values. They would just remain empty ideals. But instead, God gives them laws, actionable items that will show them what those values look like and how to acquire them. Israel's job is not just to preach God's values, but to live and model the principles in everyday lives. These laws can teach us just how to do that. So, join us next week, if you like, as we deal with the tabernacle on the next Parasha experiment. Thank you for joining us today, and we hope that you enjoyed our videos. If you will, leave comments and tell us how you feel about these teachings. Let us know if it has blessed you, some thoughts that you might have on any of these 4 parts of this Mishpatim Torah portion. We thank you for joining us today. Shabbat Shalom. Now for the Aaronic blessing. Adesso la benedizione di Aarone. Yevarechecha Adonai veishmerecha. Yair Adonai panavalecha veichunecha. Yisa Adonai panavalecha veyasim lecha shalom. L'shem Yeshua HaMashiach. Sarha shalom shalom. May the Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face to shine upon you and be gracious unto you. May the Lord lift up his countenance upon you and give you peace. In the name of Yeshua the Messiah, the Prince of Peace. Shalom.
Che il Signore vi benedica e vi protegga. Il Signore faccia risplendere il suo volto su di voi e vi sia propizio. Che il Signore elevi il suo volto su di voi e vi dia la pace. In nome di Yeshua, Gesù, il Messia, il Principe della pace. Shalom.
Panav elecha vichuneka Yisa Adonai panav elecha ve'asem lecha lecha shalom. May the Lord bless you and keep you. May the Lord make His face shine upon you, be gracious to you. May the Lord lift up His countenance upon you and give you peace. Shalom. Shabbat shalom.